Well, good morning, everybody. Grace and peace to you from our Lord Jesus Christ and all the saints here in Central California. I'm coming to you after a doozy of a week. Okay, so all that was supposed to happen was, okay, let me start from the beginning. Palo Alto came out with the Palo Alto Networks, maker of next generation firewalls, came out with a, let me close my door here. It's not very effective, but keeps me from getting distracted. They came out with an advisory with their root certificates were expiring, so they need to be updated. So there was a PAN-OS upgrade that was required. So I did the PAN-OS upgrade a few months ago. Then they came out and said, well, that didn't completely solve the issue. There's still some root certificates expiring. So what we're going to do is send out a dynamic update, and we need you to install this and reboot the firewalls. And that'll hold you over till November, by which time you should have installed yet another PAN-OS update. And then you shouldn't have to do anything anymore after that. Okay. So I installed the dynamic update. That's easy. It's just, those are just things like virus signatures and things like that. And so apparently they stuffed some temporary certificates in there or something. And these certificates are used to access Palo Alto cloud services. So the dynamic update was downloaded, and all that was left to do was reboot the firewalls. And I've been kind of putting it off because things have been coming up, and I'm the only one here, so I don't want to put too much on my plate. So this Monday I'd set an appointment to a reminder to reboot the firewalls. So that's what I did. But I did it a different way, and I'm wondering if this is how things all went pear-shaped. So normally what we do when we do like an OS upgrade or something on the firewalls, we'll disable preemptive failover, which, as I understand it, and you Palo Alto guys, if you're out there, can correct me, but that will basically, when the machine fails over, because there's some issue with whichever is the primary firewall at the time, we do active standby, so we have a primary and a secondary. There's an issue with the primary, it'll fail over to the secondary. As soon as the problem is corrected with the primary, it'll automatically fail back. So you're always going out of the primary firewall. So normally what I'll do is I'll disable that preemptive failover so that when it fails over, it stays failed over until you manually fail it back. Which might be not a bad idea going forward. So what I did, because there was no we now, there's just me, I said, well, you know what, let's just let the firewalls do their thing. So I just went in there and boom, rebooted the primary firewall with no disabling preemptive failover, no manual failover. I just rebooted the firewall. We dropped one ping to the internet and things kept humming along. I could still download or watch YouTube videos and download stuff from the internet just like normal. While the primary firewall was rebooting, the secondary took over and did exactly what it was supposed to do. The primary came back up. I waited. Well, it takes about 15 minutes to do a reboot, number one, to fully reboot and then come back up. It's close to 15 minutes. So I gave it like 20 minutes, and then I went back and checked, and sure enough, it was back up, and it was the primary again. The secondary had failed back automatically. Like, oh, well, that's cool. So I did that one. I said, well, secondary can wait. I'm going to go back and do the primary segmentation firewall. Well, what's a segmentation firewall? So kind of gets into the weeds. We have several virtual routers running within our core network. We have a virtual router for users, and that's actually where our firewall lives. We have a virtual router for IoT. We have a virtual router for servers, telephones, and a couple others. So what we did Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused. I'm trying to think ahead of what I'm trying to say. These aren't scripted. This is all off the cuff. So the segmentation firewall is basically what handles routing between those VRFs, because those virtual router VRF, it's virtual router facility or something like that. They can't talk to each other, so they have to traverse something to get from one VRF to another. And that's what this firewall does, is it examines the traffic, and we can filter on things, which we're not doing right now. We're mostly just examining for malware and viruses. You go from from the user's VRF, you want to go to a server, you're going to go hit that firewall, you're going to go through it, then you'll get to the server's VRF, and then get to the server. I rebooted that primary one, and same thing. We lost maybe a ping to one of the servers I was pinging, lost one packet, and everything kept humming along. Like, oh, well, cool, that was good. And then I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and just, once it came back up, I'll just go ahead and reboot the secondary segmentation firewall, and then circle back and do the secondary internet firewall. That's what I did, and everything seemed to go swimmingly, and I was patting myself on the back for such an easy job, basically. And then one of the help desk guys walks up and he says, hey, is there anything wrong with the Finesse server? I didn't know this, but Finesse is apparently an application that they use to monitor their call stats, who's taking calls, how long they're talking, calls dropped, calls handled. So we got a big screen over there that displays that. And I said, no, it's okay. Is it down still? And he goes, no, it came back up, but I was just wondering what happened. I said, oh, well, I was rebooting the firewalls. And he goes, oh, okay, maybe that's what it was. Shouldn't have been. I mean, I think ultimately he's right, that's what it was, but it shouldn't have done that. So, okay, I'm all fat, dumb, and happy for the rest of the morning. And then that afternoon, one of the application developers that sits right over there, he came over and says, hey, can you jump on a call real quick? Famous last words. Can you jump on a call real quick? We're having this Huron process is having problems. I didn't even know what a Huron process was. So I get on the call, and what I learn is our users who are trying to log into their web server can't authenticate. So they wanted us to make sure the VPN tunnel is up. So Huron is this, and this web server is at this other company. It's not available on the internet. You have to have a site-to-site VPN with them, and it has to do with revenue. Revenue cycles, and which I have no idea what that is. So it has to do with billing and making money and all that good stuff, forecasting and whatever. So it's important. All the execs find it very important, so therefore it's important to me, which they made clear. So I get on the call, and the tunnel's up, and they say, well, we can't reach your server. I said, why do you want to reach the server? So then they explain to me, here's how it works. The users on our end go to a web server, which is over in their environment, goes over our VPN tunnel to them, and this is a site-to-site, and this is Palo Alto to Palo Alto firewall. There's no, we always have problems with Palo Alto to another vendor like Cisco or Fortinet or some other. There's always problems setting up the VPN, so that's the first thing we always check. But we're Palo Alto to Palo Alto. That's a no-brainer. It's just you set it up and it just works. We checked the tunnel. Everything's working fine. We even tried bouncing the tunnel a couple times. They bounced it from their end. I bounced it from my end. And if you don't know, bouncing a tunnel means you basically disable the tunnel and then re-enable it. So that didn't fix things. So I said, all right, well, let me do some research and I'll get back to you guys. I called Palo Alto. They started checking into things. I couldn't find any problem. And I said, well, they say there's a problem. So we got them on the call, the Huron people and Palo Alto, and we're doing some troubleshooting. which was mainly involved with taking packet captures at my firewall. So the Palo Alto guy was doing that. I'm like, okay. And then I noticed on Intermapper, and if you don't remember, Intermapper is my network management software. So I noticed on Intermapper all of a sudden, and I started getting emails at the same time, that my switches were bouncing. So on Intermapper, they would turn red, and then they would turn green a minute later. And then my email was just filling up. Switch 123 down. Switch 123 up. And first thing I started thinking is, oh no, we've got some sort of broadcast storm going on. Holy cow. And so I started panicking and telling them, hey, you know what? I can't continue this call. I've got some issues here I need to attend to. I didn't want to tell the Huron people that it was internal switching, because they would immediately point a finger at that. That's the problem. No, that wasn't the problem. Incidentally, we still don't know what the problem is, so that's the spoiler alert. That's the end of this long, sad story, is we really don't know what the problem is yet. We'll find it, but we don't know yet. Anyway, to continue the story, jumped off the call, and I opened up a call with Extreme, and spent the rest of the day. This was so the first Palo Alto call when we were doing the troubleshooting was Monday afternoon, and said, look, guys, I got to get off the call. I can't continue on this. Then I called Extreme Networks. So they got on the phone. They started checking things. They kept looking for a physical problem. I kept thinking, guys, I think this is a routing problem. This is a route flapping somewhere, or in the fabric. Maybe there's a fabric flapping of some kind. I don't understand fabric enough to really explain it to you. They were checking things. We checked things for the rest of the day. We couldn't find anything. So I ended up pulling tech supports from every one of my fabric switches and uploading it to Extreme, and they're going to check things out. They checked things out, and they said, we cannot find any issues. I'm like, well, geez, that's no good. But the thing is, we weren't getting any user calls. No, I had these nightmarish visions of the entire switches dropping offline. Turned out it was only the management VLAN, the management network, which was impacted. So we just weren't able to get to the management VLAN of the switch. I won't say interface, because we don't really use the interface. We just use a management VLAN on the switch. And it was just that. And I said, okay, well, I'm still not too comfortable with that. I'd like to fix that, but the big boss, the CIO, said, no, we need to finish with Huron. We got to get this thing going. So these guys said, that's got to take top priority. I said, okay, but I just don't know if this other thing is going to spread or not. So anyway, so yesterday we started off the day. Switches are still bouncing up and down. We start taking more packet captures and stuff from Palo Alto. We're working with them, and we're really starting to dig into it. And after about 6 hours, well, close to 6 hours, maybe 5 hours, we're not making any headway. We've been on the phone, a bunch of people on the phone for 5 hours. We haven't made any headway with this. But, well, that's not true. What we have learned is that, so their Active Directory process, whatever they use to pull our Active Directory service and authenticate users, we found out the packets are getting to the server, coming all the way through our network. They are being seen at the server. They're coming back. They get all the way back to our internet firewall where the VPN tunnel is, and then they don't go any farther. So where we sit right now is Palo Alto took a bunch of tech supports and enabled some logging and did some packet captures, and they're busy crunching that as I speak at this moment. So we still don't know what's causing that. But I'm going to circle back to the whole switch bouncing thing. Yesterday morning, before we even started this, the switches are still bouncing. And then I get a call from the help desk saying, hey, guest wireless isn't working. Oh, great. Well, all I wanted to do was reboot a firewall or two. So anyway, and I'll go into the the reasons why I think this rebooting firewalls affected this. Um, oh, great. Well, that's just dandy. I don't have enough problems right now, me by myself with the entire hospital. Um, so I told them, I'm sorry. I says, are their wireless working? Yeah, employee wireless is working. Okay, well, I got other things going on right now. I can't look into it right now. And they're like, okay. So they helped me out. And they sent out a notification to the hospital saying guest wireless is down. We don't know it'll be back up. So I kept working with these guys and they finally got a guy on that knew a little bit more about routing and firewalls. So Palo Alto people, if you're watching, you need to up your tech support game. I'm sorry. Anyway, so it's taken a total of 10 hours before we actually get this elevated to another guy. And he's looking at things and taking some packet captures, and he says, okay, and then he disables all the packet captures. And we're talking, and then I kind of look down at my intermapper thing, and I see that it's all the switches are up. I check my emails, and the emails have just stopped coming in. The switches management side has just stopped bouncing. And I grabbed my phone, and I said, well, I wonder if I can get on guest wireless, and I connect to guest wireless, just like that. What in the heck? So here's the thing. What's the common denominator for me for guest wireless and my switch management network? It's the internet firewall, believe it or not. So guest, to get out to the internet, they have to get, well, to log in, they first have to get a DHCP address, IP address through DHCP. That comes from the internet firewall. And for that, I hand out a 192.168 address because it's not routable on my internal network at all. So the only place they can go is the wireless controller and then to the internet firewall. Only places they can go. Guests. Employee wireless is a different animal. It gets its IP from where I get my DHCP from my computer, just a regular DHCP server. But that's the firewall is where they get their IP address. And the firewall is also, we have a VLAN set up on the firewall that is our default gateway for the switch management network. And we did that because we wanted to, if everything was going south, we wanted to be able to get into the firewall from home and at least always be able to get to the switch management network. And since it's directly connected to the firewall, it's the default gateway, at least that VLAN. We have a separate interface and VLAN on the firewall just to be the default gateway for the switches. And that's where it is on the firewall. So that's the common denominator there. So at this point, I've completely ruled out my switching environment. There's no problems going on there. There's something going on with our edge firewall. And I'm hoping Palo Alto can find it. And as far as why the guest wireless went down and why the switches were flapping, the only thing scarier than it happening is not knowing why it was happening and not knowing what fixed it. At this point, the only thing I can imagine is that when they were doing some debugging and packet traces and whatever, that they maxed out the CPU of the firewall, and it just was not able to respond to some of these interfaces, some of this traffic. Because the fact that it just healed itself is still very disconcerting. I was praying a lot, so was it God? I don't know. I think God's got better things to do, so I don't think it was him. But hey, you never know. I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule it out. But yeah, so that's where we stand. Palo Alto is crunching data, and I'm just waiting. And So yeah, this revenue cycle thing was hugely important, and there's no backup. So I was talking to the CIO yesterday. He sits right over there. I said, well, what's the backup plan? Because I mean, when you come up with a plan, the very first thing you should do on that plan is come up with a backup plan. Um, and so they plan to use a VPN tunnel to connect to this company to do revenue cycle stuff. What's the backup plan? What happens when the tunnel goes down because some idiot reboots the firewall? Um, and incidentally, aside from the finesse server and this is the only things that were impacted at all. So we're a little confused as to why this is happening for this one workflow. All the other VPN tunnels, no problems. Everything's working fine. So something's up. So later this morning, I'm going to run through some of the troubleshooting tools. I forget what they call it, but basically you can put in a source and destination and all that, and I'm thinking the ASA, they call it a packet tracer or something like that. It does roughly the same thing. You put in the parameters and it'll tell you what rules are triggered and what it's going to hit and all that stuff. So I'm going to be doing some of that today. Haven't really had a chance to do that because I've just been, running around with my hair on fire all week, responding to, requests for updates on the situation. But oh yeah, I'm getting sidetracked again. So the backup plan. What is the backup plan? So I talked to the boss. He says, "Well, there really isn't one." I said, "Well, all that's failing is user authentication, right?" Yeah. And I said, "Well, why can't we just ask them to create local accounts on their web server, just temporarily, just to, until we get this fixed?" He goes, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Yeah, I don't know either." So he said, "Well, why don't you ask them?" So I did. I sent out an email, and the first response I got back was from the vendor here on, "Oh, no, we can't do that. That'd be too much trouble." And then I don't know what happened on the back end after that, but about an hour or two later, we get another email. "Please send us over a list of users for us to create user accounts." So I have a feeling it probably went up to the CEO of the hospital, and he reached out and touched somebody. So anyway, so as of I think yesterday afternoon, they had created user accounts for everybody over here, and they're going to try to log on using local accounts this morning, which is great. It's giving me some breathing room. I'm still waiting to hear from Palo Alto. I haven't got an email back from them, so apparently they haven't quite finished looking at the logs. But like I said, I'm gonna go on this morning and go through some of the packet tracer. I forget what Palo Alto calls it. See what I can find out. So okay, that's the long sad tale. So too long, didn't read. Be careful when you reboot firewalls. So my lessons learned is next time I have to do a reboot, I'm going to do a manual. I'm going to disable preemptive failover. I'm going to manually fail it over, reboot the firewall. When it's up, it's stable, I'll manually fail it back and immediately reboot the secondary firewall right after it. Because I think rebooting the primary firewall and then rebooting the two segmentation firewalls and then rebooting the secondary internet firewall, I think that threw some kind of chaos into the system that I don't know what. That's just a gut feeling. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. So everybody, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell. Keep those great comments coming. And if you have any suggestions, if you're a firewall guy, especially if you do VPN tunnels, hey, throw me a bone, man. I'm not proud. I'll take suggestions. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Send those prayer requests in as well, and we'll catch you guys all next week. God bless.